This is Embrace Your Inner Boldness, a podcast about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. I'm Melissa Henning Frank, coach, guide, and founder of Becoming Bold. I help you strip away the conditioning, reclaim your voice, and rise into the power that's always been yours. Let's get right to it. Hey, thanks for tuning in. It's been a little bit of a rough week for me, so I'm hoping my voice survives the recording of this episode. Just had a cold, and it just was one of those that really hung around for a long time and took me out enough where my voice was impacted and made me realize how much I truly rely on my voice in my business and in all the things that I do. So I'm grateful to be on the tail end of that. I've got my cough drops here in case I need it, but I appreciate you listening in. Today, I want to talk about something that I lived before I ever coached it, and that's what it actually feels like to be on a team that has your back, no question, and no performance review required. I spent time in the Army way before I built Becoming Bold, and one of the things that has really stuck with me ever since, in every boardroom, every workshop, every leadership offsite that I facilitated, is this: the military builds cohesion on purpose, and corporate teams mostly hope for it. In the decades that I've been working with manufacturing teams at all levels of an organization, I've come to the conclusion that there's ample room for inconsistency in the civilian world that simply does not exist when you're a soldier being trained for war. And that makes sense, right? There's no room for lack of accountability or inconsistent accountability. There's zero allowances for misunderstood expectations. That is the big difference between teams of soldiers and teams at work in civilian life. And that difference shows up in so many ways. There's performance issues, communication issues, how a team handles conflict when things get difficult, and in the way that accountability tends to fall by the wayside when things get busy. So let me explain. Let's talk about the camaraderie gap. In the military, you train together, eat together, sweat together, and depend on each other in ways that are physically real. If your battle buddy doesn't do their job, you feel it immediately. There's no ambiguity about whether or not the team matters. The structure forces that kind of connection. And in a lot of corporate teams, people show up, they do their individual piece of the puzzle, and then they log off. They might never have a real conversation with the person 2 desks over from them. The org chart says team, but the day-to-day vibe says a group of individuals occasionally on Zoom or Microsoft Teams. And it's not anybody's fault. It's a design problem, and it's a human nature problem. Camaraderie in the military is engineered through shared hardship, shared routines and rituals, shared priorities. Corporate teams rarely build that in on purpose. I'm not saying that none of them do. I have seen teams who really build in that camaraderie piece, but it's really rare. And before you say it's not realistic to run your team like the military runs theirs, I'm going to challenge you to think outside the box on this one, because there are some military norms and practices that are realistically transferable, and they have long-lasting positive impact on how your team shows up. So let's talk about what gets built in versus what gets left out. The military builds in shared training that creates competence and trust at the same time. There are rituals, routines, traditions that really reinforce the identity and enforce this is who we are. There's crystal clear roles with total consistency and clarity on what happens when someone doesn't show up. And there's a culture where struggle is named out loud. It's not hidden or shamed or judged. It's an expectation that you're going to say it when you're struggling. Corporate teams often skip straight to the outcomes. We want to hit deadlines. We want to hit the numbers. And the relational foundation underneath all of that gets treated as a nice to have instead of the actual infrastructure that makes high performance possible. And that relational foundation is trust. Here's what I've seen in every team effectiveness workshop I've ever run. Teams that trust each other recover faster from mistakes, and teams that don't trust each other start managing perception instead of managing the work. Huge energy leak. But now let's talk about the differences in communication. Military communication tends to be direct. It has to be. There's no room for misunderstandings because it literally could be life or death. Clear orders, clear expectations, clear feedback. There's a real cultural permission to say that didn't work without it becoming a personal crisis. Corporate communication often gets wrapped in so much diplomatic, emotional, or political padding that the actual message gets lost. People soften feedback until it's unrecognizable, or they come in so loud and hot with their constructive criticism and call that effective feedback, and then they wonder why nothing changes. This is one of the energy leaks I talk about pretty constantly in my workshops. We speak up in the room, or we don't, and that crucial moment disappears. A team that has taken the time to build real trust can afford to be direct because directness doesn't feel like an attack. It feels like respect. And oh boy, let's get into conflict management. In the military, conflict gets addressed because the mission depends on it. You can't have soldiers fighting against each other. They're on the same team. You can't let tension simmer when lives or outcomes are on the line. It gets said out loud, it gets worked through, and the team moves forward often faster than people expect. In corporate settings, conflict frequently gets avoided, swept under the rug, rerouted through gossip or side conversations, or escalated to HR before anyone tries to have a direct conversation. That avoidance does not make the conflict go away. It just lets it silently grow into something incredibly difficult to manage. So we say it out loud before it becomes a big issue. And when things shift, we say it out loud again. That's not just a nice thing to do. It's a discipline. It's the same discipline that keeps military units functional under pressure, extreme pressure, and it's almost entirely absent from how corporate teams operate. So what are we supposed to do with this? I'm not suggesting that every corporate team needs boot camp, but what I'm suggesting is that connection isn't soft, it's built into the structure. The bonding the military creates is not a side effect of that mission. It's a prerequisite for the mission to succeed. So if you lead a team, consider these questions. Do people on this team really know each other beyond their job title? Is there a shared identity as a bonded team, or is it just a shared org chart? When something goes wrong, does the team say it out loud or does it quietly fester? Is feedback direct and effective enough to actually change behavior? Is accountability consistent and our expectations clearly understood? Teams that feel like a cohesive unit perform like a cohesive unit, and teams that feel like strangers sharing a deadline perform like strangers sharing a deadline. Building team cohesion is the long game, and it takes consistency and intention. It takes shared experiences, real rituals, and a willingness to be direct with each other. It is absolutely buildable in a corporate setting. It just has to be built, not assumed. And that's the work I do with teams now, helping them become a cohesive unit, not just a roster. So that is what has been on my mind today. I hope this was helpful to you, especially in those moments where you feel like things could be better on your team, but you're not sure how to get there. Check out the link in the show notes to learn more about the programs available to identify and eliminate the energy leaks that you and your team keep recycling. And until next time, please be kind to your mind. That's it for today's episode of Embrace Your Inner Boldness. If this stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Screenshot this episode, tag me at Becoming Bold LLC, and share it with someone else who's ready to rise. And hey, if you haven't already, take a second to subscribe, rate, and review the show. That's how we spread the boldness and keep this movement growing. Whatever came up for you today, feel the fear and do it anyway. You don't need to wait for perfect timing or permission. You are powerful. You are ready. And remember, the only limit to your boldness is the one you set for yourself. Until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and keep becoming you.